Well, howdy and welcome to Cereal at Midnight. My name is Heath, and this is a Western Spotlight on B Western heroes is essentially what it is. I talk about Westerns fairly often here on the channel. You know, I just did a recent review of the 4K for High Plains Drifter. Anytime I can talk about Westerns, I like to, but these Western Spotlights that I do, and this is the third one, they're deeper dives, and this is probably the most personal one that I've done, because this one I just had to make this, right? Sometimes I do these Western Spotlights to say, hey, you guys we're physical media fans, here's some Westerns I recommend. Because the Western genre is the least, in my opinion, it's the least appreciated genre of any film genre for people my age and younger. You know, people that grew up with Westerns, baby boomers specifically, you know, if you're watching this in your mid-50s, 60s, 70s, you grew up with Westerns, you probably love them. But there was a trailing off in the 70s and in the 80s. So you're going to find a lot of people my age and younger who may like Unforgiven. They may like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. They know some Westerns. But when you get into the esoteric stuff, when you start talking about Buck Jones or Charles Starrett, who we're going to talk about in just a second, just crickets, right? We were not exposed to that stuff, really. My generation and younger has not been. I was the last generation to grow up with the TV dial, pre-cable, when you're tuning in on, the Saturday night movie or the Sunday afternoon movie at 2 o'clock or whatever. I think I was the last generation to grow up with that, where we had the three major networks before Fox, right? And then you would have the UHF channels, and there was all kinds of stuff on those channels. So in some ways I do know this stuff, but I don't know these heroes. So this is where I'm at, you guys. This is what I'm doing. I am so hard smitten. I'm smitten hard, y'all, for these B Western heroes. And here's how it all came about. So a few months ago, it was October, I want to say, VCI, who releases a lot of serials, they've started to re-release some of their older catalog B Western pictures. And I've actually got a VCI interview coming up soon, within the next couple of months. We're going to talk more about this. But, VCI, over the years, for the last 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, they've been really at the forefront of a certain kind of movie. And like these two really kind of blew me away. So Cowboy Heroes, double feature, Volume 1, Volume 2. They're two double features. We got Longhorn, Stampede, the Omaha Trail, the Sombrero Kid. And so I was reviewing these, and I was just like, wow, these are great. These are really good movies. No, well, they're not good movies. They're fun movies. And I think the appeal for me is that they run well under an hour, which is nice. Usually they're 53 minutes. And you get everything. You get shootouts and chases and the frame of a character development, of a story arc. And you get bad guys being bad guys, just the white hats versus the black hats. We're really talking about the 30s, the 40s, and the early 50s. By the mid-50s, TV's taken over, and you've got, incredible stories on Rawhide and on Gunsmoke and on, you've got The Restless Gun, and you've got, you got The Texan with Rory Calhoun. That's later 50s, by the way. But the Western went to television is really what happened. And then, of course, the TV is competing with movies, and so the movies have to get bigger and bigger. And that's really the end of the trail for the small budget B movie, But that's what I'm discovering, and it's been such a blind spot for me with the knowledge, not necessarily all the way, because we talked about this years ago, the Durango Kid. I think this came out in 2020, maybe 2018. Wow, I can't believe it was 2018, because I talked about this as soon as it came out, and this was my first exposure to the Durango Kid films. Interestingly enough, they don't include the first Durango Kid movie here, but VCI has hooked us up. So, well, here, we got a Tex Ritter double feature. We got a Alan Rocky Lane double feature. We've got, Wild Bill Elliott has been the most impressive for me. He's got the most gravitas, and he feels the most authentic, and also maybe the most, he has the most authority. This Charles Starrett double feature, the original Durango Kid movie. So Columbia releases this Durango Kid movie in what is I don't remember the year off the top of my head. Maybe they say it, 1940. And then it's not, years go by, and then they're like, hey, what do we do with that Durango Kid? Let's dust that off and make that a series, not a TV series, a movie series. So Charles Starrett goes on to do dozens and dozens of Durango Kid films. I think there's around 50, maybe 52 is the number that comes to my head. But always do your own independent research. So this has 10 of them on it, and there's no complete, there's no second volume of this. So that's part of it, is that these movies are obscure and they're kind of hard to find. And they are often owned by studios and they're not super profitable, so they sit in vaults. Some of them are in the public domain. We'll talk a little bit about I have so much ground that I want to cover here, but I need this video to be easily approachable. So I've known about these B-movie heroes, but I'm really doing the work. I'm watching these movies. So every Saturday, I'm doing this thing. Every Saturday I watch a Western, usually, the morning time while I drink my coffee. Tell you more than you need to know. Bree makes pancakes on the weekend. Bree, my wife, makes homemade pancakes every single Saturday morning. And so I'm eating pancakes, drinking coffee, and watching a B Western, usually every Saturday morning. Sometimes I do one on Sunday too. But I'll write about it. Just a few paragraphs. It's mostly for me, so that I can remember what I watched, and because there's not a whole lot of Western plots. The appeal for Westerns is specifically, well, really the appeal for a lot of things for me is the actors and how the story is told. Plots are not, plots don't get me into to watch a movie. It's the actors and the directors and how the story is told. And that's the joy of watching character actors that you care about, because you just get to watch all these things. You're like, hey, there's Tony Curtis in the background. So this really opened the floodgates for me, and I'm now so interested, and I'm spending so much of my time researching these guys, researching Tex Ritter, researching Hopalong Cassidy. You guys, Classic Flicks is restoring every Hopalong Cassidy movie. And I want to say it's in a high resolution. I can't remember if it's 2K or 4K. It's going to be amazing. So this restoration work, this preservation is being done. It's a good time to be coming to these movies, but I'm just fascinated by these stories and by once the Western, I don't even just mean like your big John Ford, The Searchers kind of Western. I mean, once this kind of Western, your B-movie Western, ruled. It was everywhere. It was on the magazine covers. It was on television. Paladin from Have Gun Will Travel would be on the cover of magazines all over the place. And once upon a time, we're seeing it now with superheroes, where it's just this glut. And they're like, what have we got? What material can we mine for streaming channels, for films, for network television? Once upon a time, that's how it was with the Western. And so there's thousands of hours of Western material out there, and a lot of it, because it's B and low budget, just flies under the radar. A great resource for these is this big public domain collections, Mill Creek Entertainment. I should have pulled it, but there's a 200, I'm looking at it right now, 200 classic Western film collection. And there's a lot of Poverty Row stuff on that, a lot of stuff from the 30s and the 40s that PRC and Monogram. If it fell into the public domain, it's probably out there on some big brick set with 50 movies or 100 or 200. But some of these have to be licensed from the license holders. And that's a good place for me to talk about the Tim Holt collection that Warner Archive put out, because these were RKO films that are under the Warner Brothers purview, and so they released those. There are 10 volumes of the Monogram Cowboy collection from Warner Archive. So Monogram, you guys, I have a Monogram shirt. I should have worn my Monogram shirt for this. I went with Johnny Cash. I think that's still a good call. Because he knew that Johnny Yuma was a man who roamed around the West. You guys know what I'm talking about. There are 10 of these, and I'm slowly working my way through those too. B movies, low budget movies. They'd make these things in a week or in 10 days or maybe 2 weeks. That's pushing it. They would have, like the Monogram Ranch. And they'd have just these locations. That's all they did. These were factories that just cranked out Western product. And what I love is as someone who's becoming more and more film history minded, you know, you guys have watched me turn into a film historian. Sort of I've gone from a fan who likes to talk about older things to being like, oh no, I just want to talk about old stuff and why it's cool. Like that's the evolution of this channel. Because I love these, you know, older properties, I'm able to see that there's a competency to the studio system, yes, but even the B movie studio system, the Poverty Row system, there's a competency. You've got, you know, I read somewhere, I don't even remember where it was. I would give credit where it's due, but I don't remember who said this. But they were talking about the decline of the Western and why they don't make these things anymore. And it's because there is no support system for it. There's no infrastructure for that. Once upon a time, when these things were being made, they were being churned out, and you had the same actors, the same cameramen, the same directors, the same writers, and it was just this sort of a treadmill. Now, treadmill can be a bad thing too, and maybe it probably was at the time. But we look back now and we have these artifacts of this, you know, I look back on it with these rose-colored glasses. But it's this system that's set up to just do this thing, and that's all the thing is, you know. We make widgets that have Westerns, you know, and so that's where the resources go, and that you just get good at it. You know, you do enough of these B pictures, you get good at making B pictures, bringing them in on time, bringing them in on budget. Look at what Bud Bedecker was able to do, just with great actors, great screenplays, and limited resources. I mean, Bud Bedecker is one of the greatest. So I'm really discovering these. Buck Jones. This is the most interesting thing to me. Is oh, here we got Big Boy Williams, Lucky Boots and Danger Trails are the two films here. These are manufactured on demand by VCI. They were first put into print. See, I talked to Mr. Blair at VCI about this because I had questions, and I was fortunate enough to be able to connect with him. And I said, "What is the deal? Why are these coming out like Buck Jones?" Get these Buck Jones double features. They have just reissued. I think it was October. Volumes 3, 4, and 7. Those are the ones that got reissued. So I'm like, well, wait, where's 1 and 2 and 5? And he said that they are in the process of transitioning from in-house distribution to outside distribution. And they're just working off of a list, and they'll all eventually be made available. But this is just kind of how they're coming out right now. So if you are interested in these, like I am, and I should say, these VCI transfers, far from perfect. You know, there's so much quality snobbery in the film community these days, the home media community. Are we home media enthusiasts? Or are we HD enthusiasts? There's two different things. They're far from reference quality, but they're clean enough that there are usually no dropouts. And the biggest thing is that the contrast is very, it's a friendly contrast. So many of these movies, when you see them on the public domain collections or even on YouTube or something, they're so dark, you can't even see what's happening most of the time. And these VCI prints are very clean. They're probably coming from 16 millimeter sources, from private collectors. Because I've read reviews of some of these movies, and they're like, it would be good, but you can't even see what's happening. And I'm like, well, that's not I can see perfectly what's going on here. So they're very clearly taken from damaged film sources. Well, let's say well-loved film sources. But they look good for what they are. Certainly watchable. And so these are coming out, and they're manufactured on demand. They were manufactured on demand. So we're talking about burned DVDs. You understand, right? They're burned. They're DVDs burned on demand. And that's how they've always been issued. But as this transitions now, they're being made available again. So they're now on Amazon, and I don't even know all the sites that they're on, but they're getting wide distribution. Actually, I'll be more transparent. MVD is distributing for VCI. So whereas you would have gone to VCI's website to pick up something like this, well, a lot of these, the other volumes are not on VCI's website, but MVD Entertainment is getting those out to the big box retailers, which is great for guys like me. And I just continue to go, every day I'm a little bit deeper into it. I'm reading books about B Westerns. And what's interesting is that none of these sources are contemporary anymore. There are no new, I don't see a lot of new conversations about B movie Westerns, but I am seeing a lot of conversations that were written in the 60s and the 70s. There's a whole series of books by this guy called Mario DeMarco. And they rely heavily on photos and pictures of his own collection, but they are repositories for knowledge of actors that we aren't really talking about anymore. Like, there's one for Buster Crabbe, who was Flash Gordon, but he was also in a ton of B Westerns. And, Charles Starrett and Hopalong Cassidy and Buster Crabbe. There's one for Gabby Hayes. Gabby Hayes has his own, there's like a volume about Gabby Hayes, because he's one of the most famous Western sidekicks of all time. So this is really what I'm digging. This is where I'm at, and it's the thing that's making me happy. It's not horror. It's not, the latest 4K restoration of this other thing. When I have free time after a review or something like that, I'm watching B Westerns, and I'm reading about B Westerns, and I'm trying to find more. That's what's fascinating to me, is learning more about these Poverty Row studios, learning about Republic and about Monogram and about PRC, and then the Poverty Row roots of Columbia and how they transitioned into something else. How Monogram transitioned into Allied Artists and became this more respectable, bigger picture studio. But at the heart of everything is this sort of exploitation. Hollywood really runs on exploitation. The further back you go, the more you see it. This is what built Hollywood, stuff like this. So it's both. It's the big prestige picture, and it's also this is what was putting people in seats on Saturdays and just, these matinees. So I don't have a whole lot more to say about that, but I just wanted to kind of geek out with you guys. This is what I'm geeking out about. I'm geeking out over Buck Jones and his huge hat. His hat is so big. Charles Starrett, Wild Bill Elliott. Man, I am so impressed with Wild Bill Elliott. Everything I've watched with that guy is real quality. And what's interesting is, as he had contracts with various studios, read my reviews. Go to CerealAtMidnite.com, and there's a review archive there with hundreds of reviews. That's where they go. I also put them on Letterboxd. I also put them on my Facebook page. Seeing how Wild Bill Elliott, William Elliott, which even that wasn't his actual name, but how he had these contracts with various studios, and then as the 50s approach, there's this move towards realism in Westerns. There's this move away from the black hats and the white hats and the revenge, the typical, the 5 Western plots. They get more complex. They get more character-based. They get more nuanced. They get more complicated. And he's one of the guys that's leading that. He's actually probably the foremost guy that was leading that trend. So check those out. Those are really good. And some of those movies were so good that they got remade as bigger budget pictures later on. Not with him, but with other stars. So the Western continues to be this endlessly rewarding journey for me, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So what do you guys think about it? Do you have any recommendations? And hey, book recommendations are welcome. I would love to hear about all of it. This is a place for us to talk about B Westerns, to talk about Tim Holt, to talk about Monogram and Buck Jones and Big Boy Williams, and hey, the Sombrero Kid I just watched and reviewed. That's got Don Red Barry. He picked up the red because he was Red Ryder in 1940 in the serial. If you're like Christmas Story, you like that Red Ryder from A Christmas Story? Yes, that Red Ryder. It was a comic strip, but I got adapted into a feature film. It got adapted into a serial in 1940. And Daisy Rifles in 1940 makes the Red Ryder BB gun. And Don Red Barry he did not have red hair, but he was Red Ryder. And that red nickname followed him throughout his whole career. So these are the things, right? This is movie history. This is important. This means something. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Let's continue the conversation in the comments below. Take care. Till next time, I will catch you later.